Hey, I'm Colin Weston with the ModGolf YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us today. My guest is someone that joined me 6 years ago on the ModGolf podcast, almost right when we started this back in 2018, and that is Jay Karen, who is the CEO of the NGCOA, the National Golf Course Owners Association. And I just finished up a long-form audio podcast recording with Jay for the ModGolf podcast, which I had a different conversation than what we're going to have here today. Since otherwise it's like, why the heck are you going to watch this and perhaps go back and listen to the ModGolf podcast? So yeah, I'm just going to be leveraging all the goodness that we covered during that conversation. And I'm going to ask Jay some more interesting things about innovation, the future of the golf industry as it pertains to golf owners and operators of golf courses. Before we do that, though, hey, I got one little favor to ask you here. If you're watching already here, if you're not a subscriber to the ModGolf podcast, please join. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. And for us, that means a lot because that unlocks the ability for us to start to monetize the channel a little bit. And hey, if I can bring in a little bit of extra money, covers the production costs of what we're doing here, which means in turn, I can create even more and more awesome content with fabulous people like Jay Karen, who I'm going to bring on right now. And there he is. Jay, good to see you. How you doing, sir?
Good, Colin. Good to see you, my man. It's been a while.
Good to see you. Okay, you know what? Full disclosure, I'm going to say it. Jay and I have already been talking for 15 minutes, and my IT support sucks because they forgot to record this video. Oh, wait a second. I'm actually the IT support.
Yeah, your IT support is your right finger on the button. That's your IT support.
Oh, my God. So Jay is such a good human that rather than going, no, I'm done, I've got other things to do, he's been gracious enough to continue the conversation, and we're considering that as practice. I remember the old Allen Iverson take there years ago. Practice? What are you talking about, practice? But hey, we had some practice.
We did.
So there we go. So this is take deux, as we say up here in at least the French part of the country in Canada here. So take two here with Mr. Jay Karen. So before we get started, the one thing we are going to repeat here, so if people are wondering, who is this Jay Karen guy and this organization that he leads up, why don't you set the table for us here and let us know who you are and all the good things that the NGCOA does.
Sure thing. Well, as we discussed off camera earlier, there is an alphabet soup of associations in golf. And most industries and professions have at least one, if not multiple, associations serving some sector of it. In golf, we're no different. Actually, we kind of have the riches of many associations because we also have this professional game that's on television, you know, the men and women that play. So we have what a lot of folks are familiar with, the LPGA, the PGA of America, the USGA, the PGA Tour. These are all associations, right? And then we have the trade associations, which really do a lot of the behind the scenes work to try to keep an industry healthy and moving forward. And that would be the Golf Course Superintendents Association, the Club Management Association, the Architect Society, the Golf Course Builders Association, the merchandisers, the Association of Golf Merchandisers, and then there's us, the NGCOA, the Golf Course Owners and Operators. And these are the men and women and the companies they represent that own and operate the golf courses. And so what I like to say from a shorthand standpoint, Colin, is our members sign the front of checks, not the back of checks. They are the ones that put their money at risk, buying and building these businesses and opening their doors to the millions of Americans who play this game. And they employ, you know, these wonderful people that serve and lead this game as well. So in all these associations, we work very closely together in the name of the health and of this industry.
Nice. And on the podcast, we talked about a lot of the positive things in the future of golf and how technology and entertainment and other revenue generating opportunities kind of inform your members and give them other opportunities, and how you support that through the golf business conference that you do. And you're doing that again in Orlando in January, just before the PGA show. But I want to talk about some of the challenges and headwinds and what you're actually hearing within the membership. But let's kind of distill that down, because of the time that we're recording this, for the second time here today, or no, actually we didn't record it the first time. So the first time we're recording it, second time conversation. But I want to ask you in all seriousness, what happened just a couple of days ago in Florida with Hurricane Milton. So I know with an organization like yourself, of a small but mighty team of around 20 and with a nonprofit, you don't have the financial capacity to help, but how do you respond and what can you do to help right now that it's happened, even as some of the hundreds of golf courses across Florida that have been impacted are starting to get back on their feet or will in the next couple of days and weeks and months?
And this Hurricane Milton just happened a week after Helene that went through North Carolina. And we've seen I mean, Florida is still fresh. They're still happening right now. The floodwaters are still in places like Tampa, where we're now able to see the destruction in the rearview mirror of what happened in North Carolina and some of our great golf course members, and just devastating what's happened to them. And so the unfortunate thing is that these storms seem to be happening at a more rapid clip over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And what we can do as an association, and all these associations I mentioned a few minutes earlier have their ways of helping their members. And even the PGA has a disaster fund to help the individuals, maybe financially, with bridging the gap if they need a little help. Right. For us, it's a matter of getting the right information in the hands of our members before a storm hits. We prepare them. It's coming. The hurricane's coming. Here's what you need to do. Our advocacy department puts out a great deal of information on preparedness. And then after the fact, we kind of measure the moment, and what we do is we try to help when we hear stories that we can lean in and help. Like if a golf course needs equipment, specialty equipment, whether it's to clear trees or to if they're able to open up 13 of their 18 holes but their golf cars got flooded, where can they get golf cars? We may be able to bridge that gap and help them find the equipment that they need. We've done this many times over the years. And in fact, we've got just one crazy story of Ronnie Miles, our director of advocacy, when a hurricane hit Puerto Rico a few years ago. We had a golf course down there that was devastated and needed generators. And somehow, and Ronnie was very well connected to the military as well, he was able to find generators that were on a cargo ship that were in the port or nearby, and was able to get them off that ship and to the golf course so that they had generators. Just like, so it's kind of almost flying in and flying out from our central command here in Charleston to try to help these individuals, connect them with golf course owners and operators who have the resources and can get them to them. So a little bit of a triage is what we can, and we encourage anybody who's struck and hit who needs help to let us know, and we will just do whatever we can to try to get them the resources they need.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So to expand upon that, as far as that sustainability piece, both environmentally and economically, as business practices here with your members and the owners, curious to hear your thoughts on the future, as we know that sea levels are going to continue to rise, and I'm sure there's dozens, probably hundreds of golf courses all around the perimeter and the coast of the United States that are going to be in peril. So what do you do, or how do you have the conversation as far as resilience? Maybe that's the right word to use here. How can you best make your course, because you're not going to make it future proof against erosion or natural disasters, or even whether it's less water. So talk about that as far as how you can work with your memberships and or your membership and the golf course owners and golf courses to actually bolster their resiliency.
It's almost like, well, how do you fight climate change? How do you fix healthcare? These are big questions, right, Colin? Right. But when you drill it down to the business level, you can kind of feel the acuteness of it, right? It's funny because you mentioned sea levels rising over here, but out in the West, you got golf courses that can't get water. The water level is shrinking, and the table of water under the United States is shrinking, right? So very interesting that it's this zero-sum game that's happening out there with as far as weather and resources. But if there's anything that's an indicator of the catastrophe that's happening and coming, is one of the things that we're learning as an association is, and this is our job, is to listen to what's happening out there, is golf courses are starting to go bare on insurance policies because of Mother Nature, because of catastrophe and disaster and how expensive it is, that we're hearing of golf courses, we know of golf courses that simply cannot get insurance. And so that's probably the first signal of what's happening and what's to come. Not just the fact that if you just look and open your eyes and see the catastrophe and see the weather changing, sure, okay, you see it, you feel it, but you know what, got to open the doors tomorrow. Well, what if you can't get insurance? And what if your mortgage company, and you have a mortgage on your golf course, requires you to have insurance, but you can't get it? Are you going to be able to be economically alive, if you can't even get insurance? And what happens if that catastrophe hits? and you cannot rebuild, right? So it's an economic existential question. It's an environmental existential question that's really serious that we need to take seriously. The best we can do is adapt and be a friend of Mother Nature, right? And that is, how do we consume less water in those places where water is scarce or maybe more scarce? Where there is flooding and such, how can we build more retaining areas on a golf course so that when it floods, that we're not going to be out 6 to 12 holes and out of business, for months at a time? How do we learn from this and figure out which courses survived the hurricane better than others, and why? Is it because they had retaining areas and retaining ponds, and these didn't? And how do we build those? How do like you said, we can't future proof a golf course necessarily, but you can do your best to prepare. So I think being friends of Mother Nature is definitely the strategic way to go in this, so that we're not only doing the right thing, but maybe we're adapting as the climate is changing as best as we can. And it's going to take so many forms in so many different areas, because the environment is different in Arizona than it is up in Maine versus Asheville, North Carolina, and Florida. Our best role that we can do is tell the stories of success and survival and thriving and what's happening, and how do we take that and turn it into best practices around the country.
Got it. From your response, I'm taking away that seems like there's a trend that's been moving towards embracing nature, as we talked about earlier, that Mother Nature always wins. Very patient, very patient. There's been lots of documentaries and shows. I remember watching one a couple of years ago saying, if humans were no longer on the planet as of now, what would happen in week 1, month 1, year 1, and how many years would it take that they call entropy? Basically, nature just kind of takes over everything, and probably within a couple of 100 years, if aliens came from another planet, you wouldn't even know that we were here.
Wow.
Like even the big cities, it would just take it over. So it sounds like I've learned this in architecture in my background too, whereas before it seems like a post-Second World War, both in architecture, urban design, I guess also golf course design, is our ability as human beings through technology and science to overpower, overtake, and conquer, maybe the right word, nature. And I saw that with buildings, rather than using the contours of that particular site. We're just going to blast away and get rid of all the rock and build whatever we want. And I think golf courses 15, 20, 30 years ago, what I can see, 7,500 yards, everything's green and lush. Sounds like we're getting away from that. So I see that in architecture. Can you expand on that as what you're seeing? I know you're not directly involved in representing the golf course designers and architects, but I'm sure you're connected to all those people, have your finger to the pulse. So is that where you see whether it's redesign of certain courses, refurbishment, or design of new courses? So what are you seeing there as far as looking through the lens of sustainability and respecting the environment?
Well, what I see is us learning from our mistakes over 100, 150 year history of developing golf courses, right? That the footprint might have been too large or larger than necessary. Right. That was not only developed into a golf course, but maintained as well. Why maintain the margins and use the water and use the inputs and the resources to maintain the margins that, one, don't even come into play, and two, might not even be visible to the eye sometimes, right? And so we've learned, I think, one, it was driven economically. How do we save money during a 20-year period, Colin, when golf was struggling economically? So it might have been that economics drove some of this, because when we talk about sustainability, oftentimes we only talk about environmental sustainability. But you can't even have a golf course if it's not economically sustainable. So you have to look at the holistic picture of this, right? So how do we stay economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable at the same time? You can marry these practices and reduce water usage, reduce the footprint, build short courses instead of 8,000 yard courses and so forth. Bring, why not put those back tees that nobody ever uses, put them out of commission, and plant some bushes or whatever you want, right? We're definitely seeing more of that. And which is encouraging, right? Because it needs to be about efficiency and smart practices, and we need to shine the light on those that are practicing the friendliest of all practices, environmentally and economically. So that's something that any association should be doing these days.
I agree. Well, to also expand. If people want to learn more about the sustainability side of golf, because I want to bounce onto another subject here, but I'll just bring it up. So episode that we did to start off our season 16 released a couple of weeks ago. And this is with a former golf journalist, Petra Himmel out of Germany. So her focus now completely 100% is the sustainability side of the golf industry. So had her on the show, great conversation there, touching on a lot of the things that you're mentioning there, of course, taking an even deeper dive into that. But I did want to talk about another leg to the stool of sustainability. They talk about that, the third piece, which is the social sustainability, along with the economic and the environmental sustainability side. And with that, Jay, for our viewers here, I want to pull up our your website here, so they can see what's going on with the NGCOA. And while we're doing that, I also want to pull up here. There we go. So if people want to have a look at what you're doing, there's the website, the URL that they can have a look at. So hey, why don't we quickly go through the website here? And there's a couple of things I know that you want to touch on that can lead into kind of what you are doing here with an organization, just as far as the initiatives that you're taking and that are being taken to make golf more accessible to diverse communities. So here, I'll scroll through here and show people what you got going on here. And
if you dive into the advocacy, dive into the advocacy area, because I think yes, advocacy oftentimes means our government affairs work for sure, and there's a lot happening there. But I think also under advocacy, I believe it's under here where we have information about diversity, equity, and inclusion of the game. If it's not under advocacy, it is definitely somewhere in our site. Sorry, it might not. If you go under the info center,
certainly have the accessibility piece here. I can see that.
Yeah, that's definitely as far as for those with disabilities or other abilities, for sure. We're a supporter of the National Alliance for Accessible Golf and the work that they do. We appreciate Dave Barton and his work. But let's, and I know we have, and I can't remember if you go to the very top of the website, there's info centers, and under one of the info centers, it might be, let me see, go down to diversity and inclusion. You can see it right there. Keep going right there. So if you click on that, you'll see some of the things that we've been focusing on and working on. And this is a tougher conversation to have, right, Colin?
Right.
It's one of those that's politically charged, it's socially charged, and the way I look at this, I mean, strategically, it's one of two ways. You can either look at this issue dispassionately or passionately as a business owner, operator, or it's just as a human being. The dispassionate case for not just opening your doors to everybody, but extending the invitation to those who have not been welcomed into our game. Two very different things. A lot of restaurant owners, hotel owners, they think I'm doing my job on earth if I don't discriminate, and that means opening my doors and anybody can come through. That's table stakes. Right. Beyond that is, how do I go out into the community and invite people? And the dispassionate case for that is, if you look at the census in America and you look at golf, right? Our traditional audience has been white and male. Okay, that's not a pejorative thing. That's just a fact, okay? The census shows that by something like 2050 in America or whatever, that the white male is going to be a minority in our population. It's a shrinking share of the market. If you're a business open to the public, especially, and your market is shrinking, that's not a good thing. How do I appeal to the broadest possible market if I'm open to the public? And that is for you to look like the market and to welcome the market, right? So as my friend and kind of a peer and former mentor, Steve Mona, would say, golf needs to look like America. Right. And that's just who's playing the game, the workforce of the game, the leadership of the game. That's the dispassionate case. If you're in business, look at the numbers are shrinking and you want expanding numbers, that's what you need to do. It's just business sense. That's the dispassionate. The passionate argument is letting the pendulum swing that direction, because we have a history of elitism and racism and sexism and putting up walls to playing just this game in history. And what happened in the summer of 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, and how that just exploded the attention on diversity, equity, inclusion. What are we doing here as people? Every industry took a look in the mirror. What are we doing? What do we need to do? The golf industry is no different. And so the passionate, kind of case was started to be made, like, we need to do better for our fellow human beings. So you see the PGA of America doing great work, the associations coming together to form Make Golf Your Thing, to really say, look, we want to welcome you. We encourage you to come to our sport and our industry. And we're making progress. I got to tell you, when you look at the profile of the youth that is getting into the game, it is more diverse. It is more female, and it's not a pejorative thing to say, well, it's a zero-sum game. That means if there are more girls or less boys. No, this is about growing the pie, right? And so what we try to do as an association is showcase the wonderful people doing great work. We do some of the work ourselves about how to extend the invitation, how to, as the PGA of America published a guide that we helped edit, how to kind of look at your own facility through the lens of diversity. When you walk into a golf shop, do you see in the walls only pictures of Ben Hogan and Jack Nicklaus? Where's Charlie Sifford? Where's Nancy Lopez on the walls, right? Because people want to feel like this place is for me too. These are very simple things that are easy to overlook. It's not about not celebrating Nicklaus and Palmer. It's about celebrating more, right? So that's the kind of the I guess the strategy and the heart that we're trying to bring to this in these conversations, and encourage the good work that's being done out there.
Sounds like you're embracing the mantra of improv comedy, and that is never say, you don't want to be having the back and forth where then there's a no but. There's always a yes and that's how you continue the conversation on.
Dude, it's that abundance mentality we talked about on the podcast.
Right.
This is not a scarcity. People, when they look at this issue, you can see I'm passionate about it, is that they really do think it's a zero-sum game. That if someone is gaining, that means someone is losing. And that's not the way that this works. When we're looking at expanding the game and expanding access and bringing more people into the game and whatever it is, I think look at it from an abundance mentality that we're missing out on some pretty awesome people out there. So let's invite them in.
Love this. A couple of nuggets of wisdom you put out there, tie in nicely to a book that I'm just finished up reading here. We're going to hold this up. So this is a book, nothing to do with golf, called Sapiens. This is a pretty awesome book that I have. So yeah, the 10,000 year history of human beings. And in the last chapter, talking about kind of the power of capitalism. And one of the things they talk about is that it is all predicated on the belief and the embrace of a positive future. And even talking about a couple of 100 years ago, there was no credit. And there was kind of stuck in this circle. There was no growth because you couldn't get the money to actually build the thing, to actually sell whatever you have, to pay for getting the thing built, whatever that could be. It could be a bakery, it could be a golf course. And just this notion of how that is predicated and built on that understanding that tomorrow will be better, will be more prosperous, will be more hopeful than today, rather than on the decline. Otherwise, you'd never do anything. So
I love that. Wow, man, you're opening my eyes. Like that, having credit is an optimistic system. Now, obviously, they're also placing bets. They're hedging their bet too, that some aren't going to win and they're going to make their monies on those that can't pay their bills, the interest rates and all that kind of stuff too. So there is a little bit of a side to it that's like, well, if you don't do so well, we got to make our money too. But that's really interesting. What I love about association work, and I'm sorry to go down a rabbit hole here, but is that what we should be doing as association executives is reading books like Sapiens. And what I do, looking out beyond our four walls to see what is happening in culture, society, politics, economics, the world around us, and then basically filtering it for the game and business of golf. Like one of the things that people ask me all the time, what do you read? What books are you reading? Actually, I'm not reading a lot of books, but what I do love reading every single week is the Wall Street Journal, the Saturday edition. The Saturday edition has coverage and really great content on arts and the economy and book reviews and culture, pop culture, food, it's just a cross section of really interesting things happening in the world around us. I love to read that and think about what could be happening for golf in 10 years. What could be happening in fashion? Fashion is a golf industry issue. What people wear to the golf course, there's nothing more charged than whether I have these 3 inches around my neck or not. Right. I cannot play your golf course if I don't have this, right? If I have this, I can play. If I don't, I can't. It's like, Holy cow. And carry that forward to the Lululemon generation now of, people who show up with kind of tight fitting athletic clothes, and if that's okay for a sport or not, right? Really interesting debate. But I think we owe it to ourselves as industry leaders to read and inform ourselves on the trends and the signals of what's happening outside of our four walls.
Love that. Love that. Well, you had talked about big eye innovation and little eye innovation, as you
Yeah.
called it. I think we may actually have to have a deeper conversation over a beer in Orlando over this one, where you're thinking it's like, well, things that may not be qualified as innovation, I think actually do myself as an entrepreneur, whereas you don't need to create something, in my mind and what I've seen, from scratch, from a blank piece of paper, where if you're looking at trends and patterns and things that are resonating and successful in other industries, like you've touched on, whether it's entertainment, food, fashion, music, and you take the best elements of that and create something new around that, that is true innovation, and creating that in a completely different sector. And tying in again to what you're talking about as far as abundance and growth. I think you also know a lot of the work that I do with Blue Ocean Strategy, that I've had the co-author of that book, doesn't play golf at all. The only person I've ever had on the podcast in 200 episodes that's never swung a golf club, but it is the most downloaded episode I've ever had. So
wow.
that concept of it's not about competition, about that finite pie that you got to carve up. And if you get something, someone else gets less. It's not about competition. It's about creating new value and unlocking new customers. And the golf industry has done that in COVID and beyond, and all the things that you're talking about.
Oh, and it's coming. We talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but it is coming in spades as far as the expansion of what golf is going to be. That it's on simulators. And the expansion of every golf course is going to have a digital version of itself in a simulator. There's no question, not just the Pebble Beaches and the St. Andrews of the world, but every golf course in America, if it doesn't already, is going to have a simulator version of itself. That's fun. The metaverse and putting the goggles on and going out there and walking and playing a 3D version of golf courses. So, up until 20, 30 years ago, our vision of the future of golf was only land-based. And
Yes.
now, because of technology, if we have an abundance mentality about this, that the definition of golf is going to expand like the universe. Holy cow, right? So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes the next 50 years.
Love that. Love that. Well, I think that's a mic drop moment right there. We're going to finish up with that one, Jay. I know talking about the future. So with the NGCOA, you do have the Golf Business Conference coming up in January in Orlando, January 20th to 22nd. I will definitely be dropping in for that one there. And also you and I are both going to be attending in Belfast in Northern Ireland, I believe mid-May, for a couple of days, that we're going to be part of a golf business technology conference there. I have no idea what I'm going to be speaking about yet. I don't know if you do already, but we'll think of something.
And between now and next May, there are going to be at least 3 or 4 advancements in technology that we don't even know about yet that we'll be able to talk about. So yeah, I'm excited about this. I get to be one of the keynote speakers at that. This is a European-based golf business technology conference. We have a technology conference that's coming next fall here in the States, time and location to be announced. But that just goes to show you, when we're having conferences around technology, that's, again, a signal to the universe. You need to be here. You need to pay attention to what's happening. You need to sit in that classroom, or if we can make them digitally available and stream it at home, sit there and watch and listen to what's happening, because that is what is changing this industry faster than anything else is technology.
It really is. It really is. Well, that's one of the many pillars that props up the ModGolf podcast since day one. As I've always said, as you know, the tagline that I've used since my first episode in 2017, that I speak with the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the disruptors, and the influencers. And sometimes they wear all 4 of those hats. And I think you definitely wear a couple of those, Jay. So there you go. There you go. So why don't we end there? I've got the URL up there. People want to check out the NGCOA.org website. You can do that. I will include the link down in the show notes here. Also, I'll also include the link. Hey, if you're interested in this little book here with Sapiens here, you can have a look at that too. And I'll also include the link to our podcast episode. Awesome. You go back to listen to that. So with that, once again, as I said at the top of the show, anyone watching here still that's hanging on there, if you can do me a solid here and subscribe to the channel, it helps us grow here, so I can continue to have amazing conversations with awesome humans like Mr. Jay Karen. So,
and
Jay,
maybe you could also afford to hire IT staff.
Yeah. Dare to dream,
Love you,
baby.
Colin.
Dare to dream. There we go. But this has been recorded because obviously people are watching this. So hey, to second time lucky, I guess we can say. Well, anyway, thank you for your endless patience for not ditching me after I managed to bungle up the first one here, Jay. So hey, why don't we leave it at that? Thanks again. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us on ModGolf Podcast or the ModGolf YouTube channel here today.
See you in Orlando.